10 years after the Great War, you must choose your path to rebuild and expand to make a wonderful world. Do you want to learn to play It's a Wonderful World?
In this video, we're going to take you through the full rules for this game, and if you stay tuned till the end, you can pick up some tips along the way. Coming up. Hi, it's Tarrant.
And Stella from Meeple University.
Now, let's get to the rules for It's a Wonderful World, game by Jahja and published by Le Boîte de Jeu and Ori Games. In It's a Wonderful World, players play the role of one of the 5 great empires of the Earth trying to rebuild the strength of the empire. Players will draft buildings and technologies from the deck for their empires, and use what they've already constructed to gain the resources they need for building. Players will also seek the favour of financiers and generals to consolidate their power. At the end of 4 rounds of play, players will score points for all the buildings they've constructed and the favour they've gained, and the player with the highest score wins. We are showing you the Kickstarter Heritage Edition of the game, and so some of the components you see may be upgraded from the base version. To set up the game, assemble the 2-piece arrow board, and then add the General and Financier and Crystallium sections to the bottom. Place the coloured resource cubes, as well as the General and Financier chits in their matching sections of the board. All of these components are unlimited, and if you ever run out, use a substitute. Shuffle the draw deck and place it in this notch, leaving this notch for a discard pile. Then take the round marker, flipped to the green side, and place it over round 1. Each player takes a random empire card. The players may choose to use the A or B sides of the cards, but all players must use the same lettered side. For your first game, you should use side A. Each player should set up their empire card with enough space for 2 rows of cards to the right and 1 column of cards above. Of course, these cards will come later. You're now ready to play. It's a Wonderful World is played in 4 rounds, and each round is played in 3 phases: the draft phase, the planning phase, and the production phase. Players will gain cards in the drafting phase, choose which ones they're going to try to construct in the planning phase, and then gain resources to produce them in the production phase. In the drafting phase, in a 3 to 5 player game, each player is dealt a hand of 7 cards. The players look at those cards and choose one that they wish to keep, placing it face down into the bottom row of their tableau. Then the rest of the cards are handed in the direction shown by the current round marker. This will be clockwise in an odd-numbered round and anti-clockwise in an even-numbered round. All players then reveal their chosen card simultaneously. Players then look at the 6 cards they were handed by their neighbour and do likewise, choosing one to place face down into the lower row and handing the rest on. These are again revealed simultaneously. Drafting continues in this manner until all the cards are gone and all players have chosen and revealed 7 cards. Drafting in the 2-player game works the same way, except each player starts with a hand of 10 cards instead of 7. However, each player will still draft only 7 cards, and the 3 cards left in hand are discarded at the end of the draft phase. The next step is the planning phase, and in this, players must choose what they're going to do with each of the 7 cards drafted. There are 2 options: either place it under construction or recycle it. To place a card under construction, the player takes the card from the draft row and adds it to the under construction row, which is the top row of cards. Players may do this to as many cards as they wish. The second option is to recycle the card. To do this, the player takes one of the resource shown in the bottom right corner of the card from the supply and then discards the card. The resource gained from recycling can be placed in one of 2 places: either onto a matching coloured square in the cost bar for any one card currently in your construction row. The second option is to place the resource onto the bottom of your Empire card. It's almost always better to place a resource onto one of the construction cards if you can. This is because once a resource cube is on your Empire card, you're never allowed to put it onto a construction card. In effect, this is like your rubbish bin. Through the game, any resources that you collect in any way that can't go onto a construction card are placed into your rubbish bin. Once you have 5, you remove them and replace them with a red crystallium cube. Crystallium is the most powerful resource in the game, but I'll talk more about that later. During this phase, if you ever completely fill all of the cost boxes on the top left of a card, then you have finished constructing that card. First, return all the cubes to the supply. Then, move the card into your Empire, which is this column above your Empire card. If there is a bonus showing in the little half circle above the bottom stripe, immediately gain that as a construction bonus. Here it's 1 financier. Not all cards have such bonuses. You'll gain nothing else immediately by doing this, but if there are resources showing in the bottom stripe, these will contribute to your production in the production phase, and some cards will also show a number of victory points gained at the end of the game. All of your constructed cards should be stacked into a column so that only the bottom stripe can be seen. All players will resolve their planning phases simultaneously, and once all players have used up all of the cards in their draft area, the phase is over and play proceeds to the production phase. In the production phase, players will produce resources from all of the cards they've already constructed. But this does not happen simultaneously. Each of the 5 resources will be produced in sequence, and players will have the opportunity to build with them between productions. First, you'll begin with the white resource. Each player counts up the total number of that resource produced by their Empire, and this is by all the cards constructed as well as the Empire card itself. Cards that are yet to be constructed do not count. Some cards simply show the resource, whereas some show a multiplier. And so here the player gains 3 white resources for those cards and 1 white resource for every white building constructed, so another 1. All players then announce the total number of production of that type, and whichever single player produced the most of the resource gains 1 token of the type shown above that resource. In the event of a tie, no player gets the bonus. In the case of the green resource, the winner chooses whether to take a financier or general. Now, all players simultaneously place the resources they've gained onto their under construction buildings or into their Empire's bin, exactly as described before in the planning phase. Players will want to make sure they have a good supply of construction sites to put these resources in order to avoid wasting them. Any cards that are completed by doing this are resolved the same way as in the planning phase. Cubes are returned to the board, the player gains the immediate bonus shown if there is one, and then adds the card to the Empire. Cards added in this way can be used for any subsequent production steps. So in this case here, the player completed it on the white resource production and so wouldn't get to repeat this white resource production until the subsequent game round. However, will gain the benefit of this green resource production later in the current game round. Once all players have finished producing and then constructing with white resources, move on to the black resources and do likewise. Continue down the line until all 5 resources have been resolved in sequence. Once this is done, move the round marker and flip it over to the other side and proceed to the draft phase of the next round. During the production phase, a player may discard any card from the construction area. When doing this, resources on the card are discarded, and while the player does take the recycle bonus, it cannot be placed on another card. In this phase, it can only go into the Empire's bin. Note as well that cubes, once they've been placed, may never be moved to another card. Earlier on, we mentioned the red crystallium, which is the most valuable resource in the game, and this can be gained in 2 ways. Either when you collect 5 resources on your Empire card, which you cash in for crystallium, or it can be gained as an immediate construction bonus when you complete some cards. Unlike resources which are placed in your bin, Crystallium cubes can be moved from your Empire card to your construction cards at any time. Crystallium is wild, and so it can be placed onto a cost square of any colour, or may be required outright as the cost of some more valuable cards. Some cards in the game may also require financiers or generals as part of their cost, and you may move these from your collection to the card at any time. At the end of the 4th round, the game is over and players count up their final scores. The only things that contribute to your final score are your Empire card, your constructed cards, and any financiers or generals. Unbuilt buildings and any leftover resources do not count. Some cards will simply score a number of victory points outright, here 1, 3, 4, and 15. Others will score a multiplier based on what else you have in your Empire, so each of these cards will be worth 1 point for every financier collected, in this case 7 each. This one is worth 2 points for each blue card constructed, so 2, and this one, the Empire card, is worth 2 points for each green card constructed, in this case 4 cards for 8 points. Each financier and general token also scores 1 point regardless of any cards that might multiply with them. The player with the highest score wins. In the event of a tie, whoever has constructed the most cards wins. If still tied, whoever has the most character tokens wins, and if still tied, victory is shared. A couple of tips to get you going for your first game. The most important thing to know is that not all colours of card are equivalent. White and black cards are really your low-cost engine building cards. They cost fewer cubes, making them easier to build early in the game, but they're very rarely worth victory points. White cards will tend to produce a wide range of resources, while black cards are very heavily focused on the blue resource production. Green and yellow cards are the next step up. Some of them are relatively low cost and will give you good production, while other ones will tend to be very high cost and be worth a good amount of victory points. Finally, blue cards will tend to be very weak for production, but very strong in victory points. As such, as the game goes on, you are generally going to start with the cards on the left and work your way up to the cards on the right. Don't be surprised if you haven't achieved very much at the end of the first round. Building cards through recycling is slow going. And always make sure you're drafting cards to tailor your construction sites to your production. There's no point having a whole lot of production and having nowhere useful to put it. Each Empire card has 2 different sides you can use, or 4 if you've got the Kickstarter add-ons. The A sides are asymmetrical and they give you a starting objective that you can try to target for points. The B side is completely symmetrical, giving all players the same starting production and no points bonus. The C side from Kickstarter gives you no starting production and just gives you 5 Crystallium to begin the game. And the D side gives players an asymmetrical set of productions, but no victory point bonus. In the solo mode, instead of drafting cards, a round is resolved by resolving 2 separate hands of 5 cards. The player picks up a hand and may then recycle or put up for construction any of these cards, or may discard 2 cards to draw 5 new cards and keep 1. This mechanic allows the player to see more of the deck. After resolving 2 hands of 5, the solo player then goes through production and only gains the supremacy bonus by having at least 5 production in the relevant resource. Finally, the Heritage version of the game comes with 2 replayable campaigns, complete with secret boxes which contain the information on how you play. And that's how to play It's a Wonderful World. We hope that you enjoyed this video and we hope you enjoy playing.
If you enjoyed this video, please help us by hitting the like button. Subscribe to us. You can also hit the Meeple in the corner to do so, and hit the bell so you can be one of the first to know if we have new videos. You can also follow me on Instagram for my board games photos and reviews.
And finally, if you have any questions, comments or feedback, please write them in the comment section below.
Until next time!